Construction Big Breakfast, where we give you a hearty serving of insider tips and business strategies to help fuel your day so you can thrive in the construction industry. Now, here's your host, Tip Top Tim Fitch.
And hi, everyone, and welcome to the latest edition of the Construction Big Breakfast. It's another lockdown special from 3 different locations around the UK. I'm Tip Top Tim Fitch, and welcome again. You've got my guest who is on my left, so on my right, which is Nick Iannetta from Mabey Bridges, and my colleague Ben Pritchard is on my left on the Teams video. We're going to interview Nick and see what Mabey's been up to over the past year or so. But of course, I hope everyone else is keeping safe, keeping to the rules, because this is being recorded the week that Dominic Cummings has got himself into some hot water. So whatever's happened, by the time this gets published, because we've got a few in the can, I don't know, but it's obviously a bit sticky for him at the moment. Hope everyone else is keeping well. Anyway, on to the podcast. So, Nick, welcome.
Good morning. How are you?
Welcome. And where are you speaking from, Nick? Just so everyone gets an idea.
I'm speaking from Killeen, just outside Newport in South Wales. It's a little town with very rich in Roman and Arthurian history. Great, interesting place, and I've lived here now for 20 years. Wow.
Well, you must have moved out a few years after, after a few years after I moved out, because as we were saying in the preamble before the podcast, I lived there for about 15 months. Back in the day when I was involved in building the Bringlass Tunnel bypass, you know, the big road that goes into Newport, and that big roundabout and the 2 bridges over the Usk on the M4. That's where I...
Well, the Mendel gift.
Picked up any of the local lingo yet?
Just a little bit. My wife is a native Welsh speaker. But dim siarad Gymraeg, I'm afraid. It's don't speak any. But I picked up a few. There's a few mannerisms, like over by there, and whose boots them shoes.
It's a crutch.
I have been known to slip into Welshisms quite a bit, which with my Scottish accent, which I haven't lost since I left Dundee, nigh on 30 years ago now, gives a lot of my friends a bit of a laugh.
We'd never have known that was a Scottish accent. So, Nick, here's the first question. Everyone gets asked the same one. Now, it's be interesting to see whether you've picked up any sort of Welsh culture. So, of course, this podcast is called The Construction Big Breakfast. So, Nick, what did you have for breakfast this morning?
Well, I've tried lava bread. I wouldn't recommend it. Instead, of what I did have was a nice bacon and egg sandwich. It was, I've got these little medallions, so there's like lean. My stepson is into his bodybuilding and all the rest of it. So you've got these bacon medallions, which have got almost no fat on them whatsoever. So they're quite healthy. But I had that with a lovely wholemeal sandwich, but topped it with a lovely fried egg as well, and a nice smattering of brown sauce. It's always got to be brown sauce with bacon. Sausages.
Yes.
And it's always, if it's a cooked breakfast of any way, shape or form, it's a cup of tea. Coffee goes with your croissants and your donuts and your pastries. End of.
There we are. There's a man of principles.
Absolutely.
Man of principles. And of course, the whole world is divided into you're either red or brown, aren't you?
Yeah, indeed. With a cooked breakfast or anything of that nature, it's brown sauce. If it's bacon, it's brown sauce. If it's just sausages, then it's ketchup. Got to be. I can't go against that.
No, right. This is. I'm with you really. With cooked breakfast is definitely brown sauce.
Yeah.
Most other things, you're right, is ketchup.
Yeah.
Come on, Ben. What did you have today?
Well, to start off, I'm a ketchup man. Sorry, never a brown sauce man. So I'll upset everyone there. I think I'm going to have to change.
This didn't come up in the interview, you know. This did not come up.
There you go. Don't you regret not asking me that 5 years ago? How different things could be. I've had the same thing I've had every day. So I think I need, before the next one, I need to spice things up a bit and not have porridge and a bit of fruit. I'm going to have to try and, next time I go shopping, see if I can find something random to have just to spice up the conversation a bit.
Well, I have to say today I had my special high protein, because a bit like your stepson, I do like to do a bit of that, but you can't do it at the moment because all the gyms are shut. But I had my high protein wholemeal bread with peanut butter. Crunchy. That's the key. Crunchy peanut butter. Anyway, that's enough bants on breakfast. So, of course, we've got Nick on because he works for Mabey Bridge, and I did visit your factory a few months ago, and with Michael, and had a look round, and it was really, that gave me the idea we must get either Michael or one of his team on the podcast, because there's some interesting stuff to talk about. Now, Ben is obviously one of our team. He's been on a number of these podcasts before, and he's the guy who's absolutely passionate about off-site manufacturing and new methods of construction, all of that stuff. So Ben's probably going to ask most of the questions today. I'll have the odd interjection. But I suppose for those that don't know, just tell us a bit about Mabey Bridge itself, because it's got a bit of history recently, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's been an interesting year for us indeed, Tim. Mabey Bridge, for those that don't know, we're a leading provider internationally of modular bridge solutions. We specialise in the supply of pre-engineered, pre-designed, high-quality bridges, which enable accelerated construction, and they connect rural and urban populations globally. So it all developed originally from the original Bailey Bridge. We've taken those principles and we've developed them into more modern bridging systems, which are not only used in temporary applications that people associate modular pin truss bridges, but we also use them in permanent and semi-permanent applications as well. So it's a great system, a great number of systems that we have. They are equally at home on urban and rural highways, as they are on construction sites, mining sites, military applications, that sort of thing. We've been going for, we can trace our history back to the original, to the Bailey bridging, and some of the parts of the business have gone even further than that, back to the second Severn crossing at Brunel, built back in 1856, I believe. But in the last year, we've become part of the Acro family of companies. Acro have been doing very similar things to Mabey's over a similar sort of period, and we've become part of that family just over a year ago now. So the main benefit is, instead of having two of the world's biggest suppliers of modular bridging competing against each other and trying to fight each other commercially, we've actually joined forces. So everybody now has the benefit of the combined strengths of both Acro and Mabey as one organisation going forward. So we've been learning an awful lot from each other over the past year, and it's continued to do so, working really well.
Let's go. I've just got a quick follow-up question, because I was going to say, I mean, the generic name for your product is a Bailey bridge.
Yeah.
What's the history? Who was Bailey?
So Donald Bailey was tasked with developing a modular bridge system during the Second World War. In 1942, he invented this system. It had to have a number of principles to it. Number one, it had to be easy to build. It had to be built using unskilled labour. Number two, it had to be manhandleable. Number three, it had to be extremely versatile, so it had to be able to do a great number of bridges and a great number of applications with as few parts as possible. And number four, it had to be readily manufactured by virtually anybody in the country, and any sort of fabricator in the country could turn their turn their hand to building Bailey bridges. It's a bit like how manufacturers now are now turning their hand to providing PPE and other things for this current crisis. This is going back 70 odd years ago, 80 years nearly. And those principles had to be something that could be built easily, manufactured easily, and deployed into the most remote areas. And it then became a very successful bridge with thousands of kilometres of it being manufactured and built in the latter half of World War II. And since the Second World War, it's changed form. It's gone into the public domain. There have been a number of suppliers of it originally, but that has whittled the numbers of those have whittled down over the last few years, or last sort of 50 years, and it's developed. It's sort of using the quick action pins, and people associate Bailey bridges and the original ones as these big saggy truss bridges. They're not like that necessarily anymore. The pinned ones do still sag a little bit, but we've got a whole load of other solutions using preload high strength friction grip bolts, which are more associated with a conventional truss.
Well, that's been fascinating for me. I'm an engineer, and of course, it's a generic term now, isn't it? Bailey bridge.
Mm.
And I've used them once or twice myself in the past when I was an engineer and actually did stuff. Anyway, I'm going to that's for the meat and potatoes of this podcast. I mean, Ben's the passionate off-site guy, so over to you, Ben.
No pressure now to come up with the intelligent, insightful questions. I mean, I've got just a couple more questions about Mabey. I've sort of heard of you, but don't know Mabey that well. Is everything that you do manufactured in Newport at the moment, or?
Yeah, well, I live in Newport, and the factory is based in Lydney in Gloucestershire, so we're just over the border. When I'm not in lockdown, I've got a nice sort of 40-minute commute up the A48, up through Chepstow, and on into Gloucestershire. So it's lovely, but everything is done from there.
That's a lovely drive, I have to say. I've done it. It's a lovely drive.
Yeah.
You don't have to pay to come home. Going that way.
No,
you don't have to pay at all now, do you?
Well, funnily enough, I never did. Luckily, I just managed to skip past the bridges, and I can sneak up the back without having to pay any money at all. So the no tolls anymore. It's great for most people, but unfortunately, it makes no difference to me.
And you guys, you like you said, you're sort of a global business, aren't you? So logistics must be quite a big thing for you guys, and I think that's one of the skill sets maybe that the industry overlook when it comes to sort of modern methods, off-site, things like that. It's not just about sort of building it and then pulling it together on site. That whole, well, how do you get it there? When does it get there? Just in time and all that. That must take quite a lot of effort for you guys to make sure. Yeah,
it's something that thankfully we've got an awful lot of experience at. You're right. You've kind of hit the nail on the head that the stuff is simple enough to make if you've got the right equipment, but the real skill is in coordinating your activities and getting them all around the world as efficiently as possible. And I often wonder, are we a global company, or have we been a British company that exports extremely well? I think certainly these days we're definitely a global company. But you're right. The kit has to be packed as efficiently as possible into standard shipping containers. So for that reason, you'll find that any of our components are never longer than 11.9 meters, because once you go longer than that, it won't fit in a standard ISO 40-foot container anymore. So yeah, we've got to detail all your products around some of those parameters.
And how long have Mabey sort of really focused on sort of the off-site provision, or is it something that's always been, because of the specialised nature of the work, something you've been able to focus on, or was there sort of a turning point at some stage in Mabey's history that went, actually we'd be better manufacturing them here and sort of putting them together on site? in larger, more volumetric type?
We've always done that. I worked for Mabey's now just over 30 years. It's always been that way as far as I can tell. We've always been about exporting products globally. The product was obviously designed originally, the original Bailey Bridge was designed in 1942 for exactly that purpose. Get large volumes out into foreign territories as quickly as possible. And that hasn't changed.
In the sort of housing sector, more than any other area, there's been a real perception issue with offsite. More, I think, in the way it looks rather than sort of the way it's built, and that's had a bit of issue culturally in why people maybe have been hesitant to get more on the MMC sort of conveyor. Have you had any sort of clients over the years that have thought, well, I'm not sure that that's how I want things done? I guess with such a specialist product and service that you guys are providing, actually, you know, it's perfect, isn't it? You can just quickly sort of respond, bang them out, bang them together, and it's great. You probably don't get that the same way as other parts of the market will.
You do a little bit. I'll be honest, there are some people that say, yeah, it's a great product, but it's a Bailey Bridge. And some people just don't like the look of them. They look functional. And we appreciate that it's not something that everybody ideally would like to see as their bridge structure. To deal with that, we've actually developed a range of solutions. We actually have the Compact 200 is our pinned Bailey-esque type bridge, and probably the most direct descendant of the Bailey Bridge, and that's what people associate us with. It's our biggest seller. But separate to that, we've developed a Delta truss system, which is a very large spanning truss system capable of 99-meter single spans without intermediate supports. It's fully bolted. It has a much more elegant. It's got a like, if you think of the capital letter Delta from the Greek alphabet, it's like a triangle on its side, and it's a truss that's made up of a series of those. It's still modular, but everything now is fully preload bolted, so it doesn't have the sag. It's actually got a pre-camber to it. It actually is a much more elegant structure. And for those people that don't like through type trusses, we have two plate girder bridge solutions. One is an Atlas bridge, which is a steel framework to support steel deck, and we've just recently developed a modular composite bridge system as well, which will take a concrete deck for those people that don't like steel deck. So you can do modular, and you can do it as a thing of relative beauty, and you can actually provide a wide range of solutions to cater for those people that have pet hates of certain structural formats.
So have you seen any sort of change in the conversations you're having, so especially since Farmers Modernise or Die report came out, and there was this real sort of uptake and upsurge in we should be doing, or we rebranded it and we called it modern methods of construction to make it sound a little bit sexier and sound a little bit more innovative and interesting. I mean, have you seen the shift now where you're having better conversations?
Yes, definitely. There's been a number of projects. I think HS2 is one particular project, which I think will benefit tremendously from modular construction. Indeed, we're starting to see the first shoots of success there as we speak. So we're definitely having that conversation where people are rather than currently saying, here's the gap, I want this, and I want this carriageway, and I want this width of footwalks. It's more about what can you do, what can you supply that can help us here, and people are more willing to tweak the gap of the crossing a little bit to suit our modular bridge product.
I've got a question on the modularisation, because that's some very interesting conversations when I visited your factory a few months ago. I mean, modular means modular, doesn't it? But of course, I'm sure you get people who ask for specials, an extra few hundred mil on the width or something.
Yeah.
What effect does that have on efficiency and quality when those sorts of requests are made?
Very major effect. And if I'm honest, up until a few years ago, we used to be a company who would accommodate those requests quite willingly because we could. We're an engineering company. Those sort of things we'd see as a challenge or a puzzle to solve, and we'd go away and we'd solve them, and we'd be quite good at it. But what we then realised was that, yeah, you know, we've got all these different solutions. At one point, the transom, which goes between the two trusses on a through-type bridge and supports the steel deck, at one point we had over 400 variants of those on our books, because every time somebody came up with a slightly different requirement, we produce a slightly different solution. And people could have any size of beam they want, any type of parapet connection they wanted, any sort of roadwood they wanted. And there's a myriad of components that we developed over the decades until we had a catalogue of hundreds of this one piece. So we decided to sweep with a new broom, and we standardised on our component offerings. We do sell the catalogue. There are one or two people who still want specials, mainly because they've always had them. We do like to try and keep a level of service to good clients, but we do so in a much more controlled manner. So if people want specials, they can have specials, but they do take a lot of time. They do cost a lot of money. I mean, when you're making a special wood deck, it's not about the 6 special wood decks that you're making for this one client. It's actually more about the 40 standard decks that you're not making in that time for others. So we've got to be a lot more cognizant of the fact that it is disruption, it is cost, and it does take longer.
I mean, if it's not a sort of a trade or commercially sensitive, but roughly, I mean, what is the cost? If somebody wants a custom width or something compared with your standard stuff, what's the multiple of the cost that the ballpark?
Yeah, honestly don't know, but I would have to guess. It would be a guess, I'm afraid, Tim. I deal in kilograms and tons, unfortunately, not so much in pounds and pence.
Oh, I see. Okay.
I wonder if I may.
More,
yeah.
I'm sure often it's more than it's worth. I mean, I guess when you're asked to do a special, you know, the client should probably think to himself, well, do I really need that special? You know, why do they need that slightly longer width than what, you know, 99% of people out there need? Is it really a requirement? And what are they asking themselves the wrong question to then be asking you something?
Yeah, that's a different context. If you put it that way, here's your choice. You can either have your special wood bridge. It'll cost you a little bit more, and it will take us a number of weeks to get the raw materials for that special part. We've then got to manufacture it and galvanize it and package it, and you'll have it in 16 weeks time between raw material lead time and fabrication, especially if you can't get the stuff from stockholders. Opposed to that, you have the standard width. You can have it now. I've got it sat in the yard waiting to go into a container. When would you like it? And we tend not to sell on cost, but we sell on ability to deliver. That after all is the big benefit of modular construction. By its nature, it's never designed for the purpose or the specific purpose you need it for. It can do a great many things. With that variation comes a little bit of excess on your natural design, but the benefit is very much that you have it now. You know what you're dealing with. Safer product. You've done away with the unknown. When you put all those things together, that's where the benefits really lie.
Yeah, I mean, that certainty of timescales, delivery, of quality, and things like that. The sort of the common sort of go-to benefits, I guess, when we talk about modular. I mean, is there any others that you sometimes don't hear spoken about in the public realm when we're talking about the benefits of modular, or You think sort of it's well covered normally?
Yeah, no, one of the things that I think people miss and don't appreciate, and again, this maybe moves as a result of maybe the way the industry has changed over the last 10 years. A lot of people, if you send them a quote or an offer for a bridge, you give them a two-dimensional drawing of what the bridge looks like, a plan, dimension, section. Great. These days, with the development of CAD software, augmented reality, virtual reality, and the like, people are more into 3D images. And a lot of people nowadays want to know what their bridge will look like in sight. And this is something we're able to do with some very simple augmented reality apps. We can build up 3D models of a modular bridge product because the models and the blocks that make up the modular have all been modeled three-dimensionally already in software such as Invennt. We can, in minutes, put together a 3D model, tell a client to download an app on his mobile phone. He can go out to site, he can then put his mobile phone up on his greenfield or brownfield site, download our model, and then spin it and position it so he can see exactly what his bridge is going to look like on his site before he's even put pen to paper on a contract. That's a really powerful tool. The visualization and the way that modular products lend themselves to BIM has been a real game changer.
So you guys have really taken on BIM and sort of digital engineering and everything that provides you to really drive forward over the last couple of years.
Absolutely. It's something that we do second nature now.
And how do you find that conversation when you're not working in the UK? I mean, the UK have really driven a lot of good stuff with BIM over the last couple of years. You know, the mandate really made us push it forward. But do you find the UK better, worse, or the same as some of the other countries that you deal with?
It varies. There are some countries that are quite up on BIM, and they're really pleased to know we've got it. There are others that don't really know what we still talk about BIM and they think what's that. So it's a bit of a mixed feast. But at the end of the day, when you talk about UK standards and UK practices, I think it's still seen, even by those that don't necessarily do it themselves, it's still seen as best practice, and people are comforted by the fact that you indulge in best practice. So there is that kind of side benefit, if you like.
Just having the badge makes people feel comfortable, whether they actually truly understand the benefits that it creates for them or not.
There's a little bit of that.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting. I mean, with so obviously we've not been able to do this in person because of everything that's going on around the world with COVID, and we actually had a bit of a conversation earlier this morning. Was it yesterday the CPA came out with how sort of fairly sort of negative predictions around the output of construction over the next few years, and a lot of that will be around what does social distancing look like, what do people need, want and require. Is sort of embracing offsite, will that help create a higher output compared to traditional methods with regards keeping social distancing and things like that? How have you adapted in your factory, or have you not had to adapt in your factory because you don't necessarily need as many people and you can space them far easier within that environment?
I think we've been a little bit fortunate in that you've seen the factory, you know that people are generally well spaced as it is in there, but we have had to look at changing some of the practices, some of the accesses into the factory, changing some of the ways that we operate within the factory to make sure that people are able to maintain social distancing. So it's required some adaptation. It's required a little bit of planning and management, but it hasn't had a majorly profound effect on us. I think also we're a little bit fortunate insofar as that being a global company, we're quite used to communicating through software such as Teams and Skype and the like with people in far-flung remote areas of the world. So it's just been more of an extension of that. You know, we went into lockdown mid to late March, and this has been my office since then. I haven't gone in once into the factory to do anything. So we've been lucky. We've had to adapt. We're thankful we've got the systems and the software in place to enable us to communicate and operate and tell the factory how many bits are needed for a particular job from home, equally as well as we have in the office. So a bit of adaptation required, but it's not been a major effect for us.
No, and I think a lot of companies had the software in place, but maybe it was the cultural thing that's had to change more so around the industry, isn't it? It's that people have always thought that you can't be productive working from home, you can't be productive unless you're all around a table having a conversation, whereas it's really sort of been a shock to the system for a lot of people that actually you're probably more productive when you're not going into the office than when you are in the office.
Yeah, it's taken a slight change in mindset, perhaps. You know, you don't have the 1 or 2 minute conversation with individuals over the water dispenser in the coffee area, but everything is now a 15-minute scheduled meeting, which can take up your day. But other than that, really, it's business as usual as far as I'm concerned. I do all my engineering, I do my designs. I talk to sales guys, I talk to clients, I talk to the guys in the shop floor. I just have to schedule conversations a little bit better. But again, there's tools such as Skype that just enable you to see who's in, who's not, who's available. You click a button, you talk to them. It's fine.
Well, I think on that note of almost business as usual from Mabey, you found ways of coping with the lockdown. I have to draw this podcast to a close and thank Nick for being a great guest and some insights into Mabey and giving us a brief history of Sir Donald Bailey, who I suppose when he died, when you were still at university, must have somehow passed the baton to you, Nick, and you've picked it up and run with it.
Did you like how we did that?
So,
we'll see if Sarah can sort of edit in an actual baton or something.
That'll be interesting.
Yeah, but this is it's a great bit of, it's a great story anyway. It's a great bit of engineering continuity as well, that this concept that came up in times of austerity, in times of world peril, it's still playing its role now, and we're right in the middle of a biggest crisis since the bridge was invented. So it's one of those great continuity stories, and very interesting to see how the modern stuff is being applied to a product which was conceived, as you say, nearly 80 years ago. Nick, thank you very much. And Ben, of course, some great questions. And everyone else, hope you've enjoyed this podcast and join us on the next one. Bye.
Very much. Bye-bye.
Come to Invennt for the highest R&D tax credit you can claim. We help construction businesses get back millions in tax credits every year. Contact us today for a free review. Thanks for joining us this week on the Construction Big Breakfast. Make sure to visit our website, www.invennt.com, where you can subscribe to the Construction Big Breakfast on all platforms so you'll never miss a show. While you're at it, if you found value in the show, we'd appreciate a positive rating. Or if you'd simply share it with a friend, that would help us out too. Be sure to tune in for our next episode.